This week on It's Clear as Mud.
Hi, welcome back. This is Jeff Patterson on my Pottery channel. It's As Clear as Mud. Today we're going to do some of the stuff that I promised you in the last video that we would do. We're going to learn how to make handles, and we're going to learn how to apply those handles onto a ceramic thrown object that we've been working on. Now, if you've been looking at my other videos, you've been learning how to make cylinders, and we're going to try turning some of those cylinders into mugs. We want to put a nice handle on them. There are lots of ways to make handles. There's pulled handles, there's slab handles, there's coiled handles, there's all sorts of different ways of doing it. I'm just going to show you one, get you going, and get you a tool. We're going to make an extruder out of a caulking gun. It's not my invention. There are other videos on the internet on how to do this, but I'm not going to make you go looking for those. I'm going to give you this real simple instruction. You're going to need some real simple tools. You could do this with a drill and a small file, like a little rat tail file, and maybe a saw for cutting the tubing, and that's about all you're going to need. So you'll get a better idea once we go through the process and I show you what I'm doing. And I'm going to base these extruder dies that we're making for this out of the larger extruder handles that I like to use on my pottery. I've dialed those in for size and everything over the year, and we'll talk about that when we're making this, so you'll understand how to get the exact type of handle that you want and the different shapes that you want. So come on, let's join me, and let's build an extruder and put some handles on some of those forms that you've been making. Okay, let's start with the caulking gun. I've got two caulking guns here. I've got one that you can buy that's the sheet metal type, and relatively inexpensive. I think I spent $6 for that. You'll notice it's got a little notch up here in front, and that's for the spout of the caulking tube or cartridge to stick through. This is an open caulking gun. I bought this one at a yard sale for $2 used, cleaned it up a little bit, took some of the stuff off. You'll notice the end of this is round and open. There's a lot less interference there, giving you a greater amount of area for you to be able to extrude through. So we're not going to use this one. We're just going to use this open one. This is what I would recommend for you if you're going to start with a caulking gun extruder. I'm using 1.5 inch PVC pipe here, and this is Schedule 40 stuff. It's nice and thick. It's not going to break. So you're going to need a selection of those. We're going to cut those to length here pretty quick, but the 1.5 stuff works just great. And then there's a thing called a test cap. These little test caps are designed for plumbers when they fill pipes full of water, and it fits exactly in the end of that tubing. And that test cap is where we're going to cut our dies to make our extrusions out of. So let's take a look at some real simple little handles that I've made and extruded in the past. And we'll see how those look and how we might want to make those into an extruder die. Okay, so here's some mugs that I've made in the past. You'll notice that this one has what looks like finger rings on it. It's kind of a 1970s vintage looking piece of pottery. It also has kind of a dip inside. And the reason I put that dip inside is it makes this somewhat U-shaped. It creates a little bit more stability in the handle. It gives it some shape, and that helps a lot. And also takes some of the weight out of it. Doesn't make it quite so thick, but that's a fairly decent looking little handle. It's a little chunky for me. And then high fire stoneware. Here's a nice high fire stoneware. This is an extruded handle that is, I probably did this one 20 years ago, and it's real comfortable. It feels real nice. It's thick enough that it's very, very durable. and easy to apply. And again, somewhat dated looking pottery, but at the same time, a fairly decent looking handle for an extruded handle. A little bit more beefy, and just that small amount of beef really feels good in your hands. It's amazing how much just a little small difference makes. And people buy mugs like this because they're a feely. People like the way their mugs work early in the morning for drinking their first cup of coffee. People will buy your mugs if they're properly designed and the handles feel good and they hold beverage and they keep everything warm, and they'll come back and buy more if they feel good. If the handles all break off, you're probably not going to see them again. So anyway, this handle this one's kind of flat and also attached a lot more attachment onto the actual mug itself. This one's just barely attached on. So like you'd see with a kind of a contemporary teacup. And this has a much more oval shape to it than the flat shape of this one, giving it a really nice feel. So that's the die we're going to make today. Now, these are of a size that I like. This one is about 7/8 of an inch finished, and this one's just a little bit smaller. You have to calculate your shrinkage in here. So if you don't know what your shrinkage is on your clay, you're going to have to contact your supplier and find out what that is, and you're going to have to make all of your dimensions 12%, in my case, larger. So here's an extruder die out of my big extruder. So this is an extruder for pitcher handles, and these are coils or round coils that you would use for either a coil or a coiled handle. And then this is the die that I used to make this mug, and then I remade it a little bit larger and a little bit more curvy on the sides. It's very, very subtle. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Let's get it in a black background. But this one's just a shade larger. Now, these are the extruder dies from the big extruder, and we will go over that extruder later on and take a look at that. But for right now, we're going to take one of these test caps, and we're going to use our ruler in millimeters to decide what we want it size-wise for shrinkage. So for my 12% shrinkage, I'm making this one at about 26 millimeters. And then when it finally shrinks down, it's going to be about 22 or 23 millimeters. So that's millimeters like that. It's so much easier to do the math on your shrinkage than it is in standard pounds. So these pieces of tube are going to come long. You buy 2 or 3 feet of it because you're going to want to make a number of different caulking guns. And then you're going to have to open your caulking gun up all the way. And you have to account for this little flange here and for this little cup there that pushes the clay through to be able to get this in and then to close it up. So this has to be a certain length. Depending on the manufacturer of your caulking gun, that's gonna determine what the length of this tube is. So I can't tell you what that's going to be for you, but I can tell you for me, for this one, this is 8 3/4 inches. Okay, so I have a number of those because I leave my dies. My dies never leave. The little die will go into the end of this and will never leave the tube. It's always going to be in the tube, and so I use different tubes and for different dies and have a selection of them. So we're going to get going. The first one we're going to make is a simple round one. We're going to pick our round die, and I'm probably going to use like a 1/2 inch, like I use a 1/2 inch drill, and we're going to drill a hole in this and then smooth it out and put it together and see how it works. So this is a 1/2 inch drill bit. It's got a nice little point on it. and those are helpful. When working on these, you want to put them, like if this was a little hat, you want to put them with the top of the hat down on the table. And the reason is you don't want to be putting all that pressure through that cup and breaking the cup. And you want to get your drill bit somewhat centered in the middle, and go slow. This stuff is brittle, and there's no reason to go fast and shatter it or throw it across the room. Okay, so there's my half-inch hole, and it's a little rough. So I'm going to go in with my little rat tail file, and I'm going to clean that out, like so, and get rid of any tags or any little bends, any little imperfections in shape that I can see here. Just gently work that out. Okay, now that gets stuck in the end of this. You can glue these in if you want. That's a little bit looser than this white piece that I've picked up. So that's a little looser. So you might want to glue that in there with some PVC glue, or the glue that they use to glue these tubes together. Right now we'll put it in this one. And it's a nice snug fit. You might want to look at that when you're at the hardware store and see if you can get a nice snug fit. These are two different brands of tubing. One is really, really nice, and the other one is a little bit looser. So I'm going to get some clay. Let's load this up and see how it works. I'll be right back. Okay, so here we go. There are a couple of ways of getting a nice column of clay. You can take a column of clay, you can roll it out and get it so it loads into the tube all the way fairly decently. And one of the things I've been trying recently, let's see if I can find my tool, is this little sucker. This is a shower curtain holder, and something similar to this, you'd be able to run it through there, get a nice little coil of clay that you can load into your extruder. And I first see that works. There we go. And then you, just like a regular caulking gun, you extrude your handle like so. Now you can see there's some little rough marks on there, and that's what you're going to have to work out. As you make your die, you're going to have to go in with sandpaper. I would recommend maybe a little wet and dry sandpaper, and go in and continue to smooth out your handles and get your handle as smooth as you can possibly make it. Okay, so that's your basic extruder with a coil in there. Let's do that again. Okay. With extruders, you want to have de-aired clay, or really well wedged clay. You can hear that I've wedged this column of clay a couple of times, this bag, and bagged it up into a square, and it's got air in it, and you can hear it popping. So it's nice to have really good solid clay that doesn't have a lot of air in it for extrusion. Okay, let's skip this one now, and let's move on to the next one. Okay, I've got my pattern drawn on here, and I want to drill most of it out. I don't want to do as much of this by hand as I possibly can. So I'm going to look, and I'm going to start with a 5/64 inch drill bit. I can see my pattern from the other side, and that's going to work out just fine for me to be able to drill it from this side. So I'm going to get those ends kind of lined up and drill my little holes. I'm going to drill 3 of them, like I said, I'm trying to get rid of as much of this material as I can without having to grind it down. And then I'm going to come in with my file and see how that works. So you can come in and file this down. You could probably come in with an X-Acto knife and carve that out. Be careful with the X-Acto knife. Don't stick it in your hand. All these tools are potentially dangerous. So I'm working away the webbing in between the two. I got a little outside my line, so I'm going to have to fudge a little bit too. A little arts and crafts time. There we go. That worked pretty good. Yeah, X-Acto knife would probably be the way to go. This stuff carves fairly easily. Okay. So I'm not going to bore you with this. Let me carve this out a little bit, and we'll get it to the point where we can start filing it, and you can come back and join me in a minute. Okay, I've got it roughed out, as you can see. Now I'm going to come in with my file. What would really make this easier, probably, is to put that in back in your tubing, and then be able to work on it, holding it well. Okay, so there you go, your basic form. I came in with a rounded up piece of sandpaper when I was all done and said and done, and I was really able to use that to smooth that out with. That seemed to work pretty darn good. So let's see what that looks like. Again, you're probably going to end up having to refine it over and over and over again, and dial it in, get it to where you want it to be. Okay, here we go. There we go. So that's some fairly decent handle material. Now, if you continue to get a lot of stripage, a lot of stuff that you don't want, and I do this even with my big extruder, I come in with a damp sponge. I come in with a little piece of damp sponge and smooth it out. I can really straighten it out and smooth it out that way. And you can manipulate these quite a bit. You know, you can. There's a lot to them. So anyway, now you can see I've removed most of the surface texture on that. I'd let that dry, then I'd come over and I'd do the other side. Smooth that side out. And then I've got handle material to make handles on my mugs. Okay, let's go. I'm going to go throw some mugs, and then we're going to study how to put handles on them. See you in a bit. Okay, so this is the full-size extruder. It's got a PVC barrel on it, which is really nice if you don't have stainless steel. I used to have a North Star. I put myself through college with a North Star extruder, and it had a PVC barrel on it, which is really good for shooting porcelain, keeping the iron out of it, and also being able to not have it rust in the future. Stainless steel is great for that. This PVC barrel does about the same thing, and it's it's not a $700 extruder. North Stars are bloody expensive these days. It's held on with two U-clamps And I've done some welding up here, and I've got it on a wooden baseboard, and it's just a bunch of different parts of PVC pipe put together. The die holder is a union, and then I can put my dies inside that, like so, and they'll seat. And then in order to cover up other dies, I have this little aluminum washer that I've cut, so I can close off other dies and leave the one I want to use exposed and available to the clay. So I'm going to load this into the barrel. I have other dies for this thing while we're chatting about it. I have a couple of spider dies that I've made with U-clamps and a little welding that allow me to extrude tubes. This one I use for teapot spouts, and this one I use for guitar slides. Oh, nice big tubes for guitar slides. So all sorts of things possible with this. It'd be nice if it was maybe had a little greater clay capacity for me. But there you go. It is what it is, and it seems to work pretty darn good for what I'm using it for. Again, a nice coil of clay to load into the barrel and put the plunger in. Now I'm going to adjust the camera here a little bit so you can watch the clay come out, because that's the exciting part. Okay, and out comes the clay. It's kind of hard for me to do it off to the side so you can see it. There's a nice column of handles. Okay, so that's something to consider. Again, if your guys are interested in this, I'd be happy to draw up a set of plans for it. Might even try enlarging the barrel and moving to a little size larger PVC tubing. But this is pretty much adequate for my studio needs. I make a lot of handles, and I just have to load it relatively often, and it's relatively easy to load. All you do is pull it up, set it aside, and put your thing clay, and put your clay in there, and you're back at it again. You're extruding handles. So we have some handles now, and we will cover these in plastic, and I'm going to put them on a board, cover them in plastic, and when my pots have hardened up a little bit, we'll put some handles on them. And so here's what I like to do. I'm designing handles. I like to have a piece that I can allow myself to try a number of different handles on and see whether I'm going to like them or not. And one of the things that I do is I keep notes. I keep lots of notes. I keep notes on how much weight I have in my pottery, size in millimeters, width and height, calculated for shrinkage. And the other thing I do is I keep track of how long the handles are that I'm playing with. So I'm going to cut this off at 7 inches. Which is longer than what I'm going to need by a good margin to create a handle on this. And I'm going to look at this as kind of where the slip is what I'm looking for. Hold on a second. Okay, got to have a little slip. What I'm looking for is how much of this handle is going to be left when I'm done with my design. So here's something that, I really don't care about this. This is something that I'm gonna not keep, and I'm gonna continue to look at. So I'm gonna start off about 3/4 of an inch below the lip, and I'm gonna go down about 3.5 inches here and slip and score for both ends of my handle. And then I'm going to take my slip, put a little slip on there. So I got some stickum. And so this is kind of how I put my handles on. I I take my handle and I smooth out the end a little bit. Sometimes you can even go at it with a little bit of a sponge. I put it up against the scored area and I smush it on there, like so. And then I bend it down, and this is where the extra comes in handy. I can bend it down here, and I can say, oh, that's too big, I don't want it quite that big. I can bend it down there and say, gee, that's starting to look pretty good, I like that. Push it down, straighten out my handle, come in and cut it off where I want it to be. I can fix that up if I want to. I could put a chop into the end if I wanted to. I'm going to use my chop that we made earlier and push that into the handle. That helps adhere it into the slip. I can do a little brushing here and smooth things out. And I kind of like that. That's not a bad looking handle. So again, what I did was I started from the top. Like so, and I bent it down and I worked my way down. I didn't distort this piece a lot, but I got a trick for you that you might like. If you find that you have gotten in this process, you've gotten your lip out around, I found that these wine glasses work really well. You can stick a wine glass or any kind of a jar. I like this one because it's bullet shaped. There's another one here that is rounded on the bottom that would also work, but I find that I end up using it upside down more than the other ways. But this one's really my favorite. It's kind of a blunt bullet shape. You can stick it in that and then just give it a little spin. And that helps take any of the out of roundness that you might be experiencing in that. That's a pretty decent looking mug. So here's another one. This is one that you'll recognize from the coil that we did. And so let's take a look at what a coiled one might look like. With coils, I will measure from the outside out. And so let's say this is 1 3/4 inches, like so. And then I will cut it appropriately. Now, this can still be bent, right? This has still got some flexibility to it. So I can hold it up and say, geez, I don't like that much. I think I'd rather have it be a little bit more flat on the top, like so. That's kind of a better looking handle to me. Okay. So give myself some indication of where I want to slip and score it. It's similar. Slip and score it. Now in this case, I'm going to slip and score both the mug and the handle, just to give myself a little extra shot at adhesion. You don't have a lot of clay here. I mean, you're really relying on this handle to be picked up by the glaze after you've glazed it, and adhere that onto this side of this pot. And that's something to consider when you're looking at it later on. Is there a fragility in that? Is that going to be problematic? Straighten it out. So yeah, so there's a second handle. We can clean that up a little bit with our brush. And so this is the design part of it. You know, how do you like that? And I will fire these. Fire them up and then feel what that handle feels like later on after it shrank. Is that where I want to go with this pot? Do I like the round handle better, or do I like the strapped handle better? And frankly, I'm fond of the strapped handle. I've been making them long enough that they're quite comfortable for me to not only use but also to make. And so there you go. So let's put another handle on one, and let's look at it from the position of what we've learned. We have how much left? We have 1 inch left. So that means we're going to cut a 6-inch strap, and we're going to use the whole darn thing on this one. And even though those aren't really identical units, they're almost the same exact height. And I think we're going to get away with it just fine. So let's go in and do our slipping and scoring. I score again about 1 inch down, 3/4 of an inch down from the top. And about the same up from the bottom. A little slip on there. If you guys don't know what magic water is, you might want to investigate that. Look up magic water on the internet. It's sodium silicate and soda ash and water. And boy, it really does help with adhesion, and especially with porcelaneous clay bodies like this one. This is Laguna B mix. Cone 6 B mix because I'm firing electrical and oxidation, and this stuff has a tendency to dry out. It's kind of like porcelain. Porcelain can be really somewhat difficult to install the handles on if the top dries out faster than the bottom, and it wants to do that. All pots want to dry out on them. Okay, so we're going to come in here and so you can see in there I got goop. I'm going to just kind of clean that up. Same thing happens on the bottom. Just come in with a brush and clean that up. Get some good slip action going in there. Take my chop and come down here and put my chop in the bottom of the handle. I just think that kind of looks good. You know, it fills up with glaze, but it also pushes that handle into the slipping and scoring. Really helps it out. So I think that's a pretty good looking mug. I think that'll sell. This is the cylinder you've been throwing. This is the strap handle from the extruder that you make out of a caulking gun, and you're on your way. So there was another item that we made, and we threw a foot for it. It was a bowl. And if you go back and look at it, I think it's on the 3rd video, we do the bowl. I show you how to throw a foot. And so I want to get you a bunch of products, different products that you can use in order to start selling. And I can't tell you how important I think it is for you to sell. One of the reasons is because what artists and craftsmen lack usually is marketing skill, and marketing is so available to you guys today in contrast to what was available to me when I was starting out, that and it's also important to sell from the perspective of you get some material money back, you get some appreciation. It's much better than just giving pots away. Giving pots away is sort of self-deprecating, and your pots are worth something. So if you're going to grow as a potter and you're going to think about making money or making a living as a potter, it's really important to start thinking about the marketing aspect as you're looking at making. The chopstick bowls are real popular. I have a friend who sells at Saturday Market. I featured his pottery earlier on in one of the videos. He does really brightly colored cone 11 reduction with lots of copper reds and blues and stuff. And so we're going to slip and score the top of this. We're going to put 2 little balls of clay up there. And they don't have to be perfect. They can just be interesting. And then I take a couple of dowels and take the dowels and go across like so on those. And now you have some place to set your chopsticks. Makes a fairly nice looking little chopstick bowl, and those indentations kind of live on there. And chopstick bowls are quite popular. You'd be surprised. Along with mugs, bowls like this sell quite readily. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to drill the holes out. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to have to go get a drill. So bear with me. I'm going to go get a tool and I'll be right back. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to drill a couple of holes in the side of this for chopsticks to go through. Like so. And this can get really smoothed out with a sponge. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to cut a couple of loops out for the chopstick to sit in. Like so. Now these can get cleaned up a lot. You come in and clean them up and hit them with a sponge. Sponge is a great way to do that. Come in and smooth them out with a sponge. Same thing with these. These can get sponged off and really smoothed out. And now you have some place for your chopsticks to go into the bowl and across the top. And that looks pretty good too. That's kind of swanky. So there you go. You have different types of handles, extruded, easily applied, fairly attractive. They're working for you. Relatively consistent extrusions, and the idea of straightening them out if they get a little wonky. I didn't do this one yet, but God, that's a great tool to be able to come in and take that little bit of bend out. Give yourself at least a shot. What I find is in my studio, if I have air coming from one side, or I have heat, or even the heat from the window down here in Arizona, will bend this pot, and so being able to take some of that out. I'm not saying it's all going to come out, and if the clay memory is bad enough in the piece, nothing you do is going to save that piece. But there you have a really nice shot at having a nice round mug. Well, so I hope this has been helpful. If you find that these videos are working for you, or they're doing something, giving you something that you need, please subscribe, please like, and please leave a comment. Any kind of comments are very, very helpful to me as far as understanding whether I'm giving you too much information, too much detail, not enough detail, all those kind of things. Plus, things that you're interested in, whether you have areas that are giving you grief that I can approach and help you out, because everybody's probably struggling with the same thing. And I'd be happy to do that, like the large extruder. If you want to have a set of plans drawn up for the large extruder that are available to you and have me do a class on making the large extruder, then we can certainly do that. The idea here that I keep pushing is to go back, look at the earlier videos, understand what I'm asking you to do. I've thrown 700 or 800 pieces of pottery in the last week. I've got a very large order for several thousand pieces of pottery that are going out, and that's not unrealistic as a professional production potter. I mean, that's what you do, and so the idea is to get you to a point where throwing is easy, where you understand the basics of throwing, and you can start developing forms and shapes as your skills improve, and that you can start selling the things that you're developing now. It's really important that I think you do that. So hope to see you next time, and I don't know what we're going to be doing next time, so it'll be a surprise to you, unless we get a lot of comments on the extruder, then we may go there, but we'll see what pops up. Thank you much, and here's mud in your eye. you.